The evening air was cool, carrying with it the faint scent of jasmine from the garden below. Moonlight spilled through the balcony doors, casting silver shadows across the polished marble floor of the ballroom. Inside, the music was soft yet intoxicating, a slow violin melody that seemed to seep into every heartbeat. Adrian stood near the corner, a glass of wine in his hand, pretending to watch the crowd. In truth, his eyes were locked on her. Celine. She stood near the grand staircase, wearing a slim, midnight blue dress that clung to her like it had been crafted just for her. The fabric shimmered when she moved, tracing every elegant curve. Her hair cascaded over her bare shoulders, catching the light like spun silk. She looked like she didn't belong to this world, as if she had stepped out of some dream, and Adrian had never been more certain that he wanted to be lost in that dream forever. When their eyes met, the noise of the room faded. He set his glass down, ignoring the chatter around him, and began walking toward her. Every step felt heavy with anticipation, as if the air between them was charged. Celine's lips curved into a small, knowing smile, a smile that told him she had been waiting for him. "Adrian," she greeted, her voice warm, almost teasing. "You look," he paused, trying to find a word that didn't sound empty. "Dangerous." Her eyebrow arched playfully. "Dangerous? That's not what most men say when they try to charm a woman." "I'm not trying to charm you," he replied, lowering his voice as he stepped closer. "I'm trying to warn myself." Celine's laugh was soft, like a whisper of silk, but her eyes told a different story. They were deep, searching, pulling him into a place he couldn't escape. The music shifted to something slower, and without a word, he extended his hand. She hesitated, not out of reluctance, but as if she knew exactly what would happen if she accepted. And then she did. Her fingers slid into his palm, warm and delicate, sending a jolt through him. They moved onto the dance floor, her body fitting against his as if they had been made for this moment. The world blurred around them, there was only the rhythm of their steps, the brush of her hair against his cheek, the faint trace of her perfume, intoxicating, like vanilla and something darker, something forbidden. "People are staring," she murmured. "Let them," he replied, his hand pressing gently against the small of her back. "If this is the last time I see you, I want it burned into their memories, and mine." Her gaze softened, the teasing gone now. "You talk like you're expecting to lose me." "I'm expecting nothing," Adrian said, though his chest tightened. "But I'm afraid of everything." The music slowed to its final notes, but neither of them moved away. His forehead brushed against hers, and in that quiet space between breaths, he kissed her. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't careful either. It was the kind of kiss that carried the weight of unspoken fears and dangerous hopes, deep, lingering, with his hand cupping her jaw and her fingers tightening in his shirt. When they finally pulled apart, her lipstick was smudged, and his heart was no longer his own. Celine smiled faintly. "You don't know what you've just done." Adrian's voice was barely a whisper. "I think I do, and I don't care." Somewhere in the distance, the night carried on, music, laughter, secrets, but for them, the world had shifted. Something had started that neither could stop. The soft glow of the chandelier bathed the room in warm amber light, its crystals scattering fragments of gold across the polished marble floor. Outside, the night had deepened, and the faint hum of the city filtered in through half-open windows. The air inside was different, charged, heavy, almost trembling with something neither of them dared to name. Aaron leaned against the edge of the table, his eyes fixed on Celine. She was by the window, her back to him, her fingers idly tracing the sheer curtain as if the fabric held answers to the thoughts swirling in her mind. The moonlight framed her silhouette, outlining every graceful curve, turning her into something almost unreal, like a painting that had somehow stepped into the world. He took a step closer, his heartbeat sinking with the faint rustle of her dress. "You've been quiet all evening," he said, his voice low but steady. Celine didn't turn immediately. Instead, she let the silence stretch between them, thick enough to be felt. Then, slowly, she looked over her shoulder. Her eyes, deep and unreadable, caught his, and something shifted. "Sometimes," she whispered, "words aren't enough." The weight of her gaze pulled him forward until there was barely any space between them. He could see the subtle rise and fall of her chest, hear the faint tremor in her breath. The scent of her perfume, soft jasmine with a hint of something darker, wrapped around him like an invisible hand. Then maybe, Aaron murmured, we should stop talking. For a moment, they stood suspended in that fragile space between choice and surrender. Then Celine moved, just enough for the side of her hand to brush against his. It was the smallest touch, yet it burned through him like fire. Aaron's hand lifted, almost on its own, finding the line of her jaw. His fingers traced upward until they rested just below her ear. Her skin was warm beneath his touch, impossibly smooth, and when her eyes fluttered shut, he felt the ground tilt beneath him. She didn't resist when he leaned in. Their lips met softly at first, tentative, as though testing the reality of it. But the hesitation lasted only a heartbeat. The second kiss was deeper, hungry, laced with everything they had been holding back. Her hand slid to his chest, gripping the fabric of his shirt as if afraid he might disappear. The world outside vanished, no ticking clock, no city hum, no walls around them. Only the rush of blood in their ears and the intoxicating rhythm they had fallen into. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Celine's voice was barely a whisper. This changes everything. Aaron searched her face, still holding her close. Maybe, he said, his thumb brushing her cheek, it's exactly what was meant to happen. And somewhere deep inside, they both knew, there was no going back. The night was warmer than usual, the moon hanging like a silent witness above the glittering city. Inside the lavish terrace of Adrian's penthouse, the music from the party below had faded to a distant hum. Only the soft rustle of the wind and the occasional chime of hanging crystal lanterns broke the quiet. Alara leaned against the balcony railing, her deep wine-colored dress hugging her frame like it had been made for her alone. The slit along her thigh caught the moonlight with every subtle movement, while the gentle curve of her bare shoulders glowed like porcelain. Her hair fell loosely in waves, a few strands dancing across her face. Adrian stepped out from the glass doors, a drink in his hand. His black tuxedo fit him with effortless elegance, and his tie hung slightly loosened, a sign that even perfection allowed itself to breathe. His eyes, deep, unreadable pools, found her in an instant. You're hiding, he murmured, his voice a velvet whisper carried by the wind. She didn't look at him at first. Maybe I am. Or maybe I'm just tired of the crowd. He moved closer, slow and deliberate, his polished shoes silent against the marble floor. When he stopped, he was close enough for her to feel the warmth radiating from him. Or maybe, he said, tilting his head, you were waiting for me. Her heart skipped, but she masked it with a faint smirk. Confident, aren't you? Not confident, he replied, his eyes tracing her face with a quiet intensity. Just certain. For a moment, the city's lights reflected in her eyes, making them glimmer like rare jewels. The air between them thickened, every second pulling them closer into something dangerous and sweet. Adrian set his glass on the railing and, with a slow motion, brushed away a loose strand of hair from her cheek. His fingers lingered, warm against her skin. She didn't step back. Instead, she turned her face slightly into his touch. This is dangerous, she breathed. Everything worth having is, he replied, his voice low. He leaned in, close enough that his breath touched her ear, and whispered, tell me to stop. But she didn't. Instead, she closed the remaining space between them. Their lips met in a kiss that began soft, hesitant, almost testing, but quickly deepened. His hand moved to the small of her back, pulling her against him, while hers gripped the lapel of his jacket as though anchoring herself in a storm. The world below could have been burning, and they wouldn't have noticed. When they finally parted, she exhaled shakily, her cheeks flushed. This changes everything. Adrian's lips curved into a faint, almost dangerous smile. Good. Because I never wanted things to stay the same. The moonlight framed them both, two shadows tangled in something that neither of them fully understood, but both knew they couldn't walk away from. And somewhere in the distance, unseen eyes were watching. The city outside was still wrapped in the velvet quiet of early dawn when Elena stirred from her sleep. A pale silver glow spilled across the room through the half-open curtains, brushing the contours of her bare shoulder. Adrian sat at the edge of the bed, fully dressed in a dark suit, his hands resting on his knees. "You're leaving?" Her voice was soft, still heavy with dreams. He turned, his eyes shadowed. "Just for a meeting. I didn't want to wake you." She pushed herself up, the blanket slipping down, revealing the elegant curve of her back. Her hair fell loosely around her face, and in that light, she looked like something pulled from a painter's memory, fragile, yet impossibly magnetic. "You can't just leave after last night," she said, her tone almost a whisper, but every word carried weight. Adrian's jaw tightened. Last night. The memory came rushing back, her fingers tangled in his hair, the taste of her laughter between stolen kisses, the way her body had melted into his with a trust that scared him more than any business deal ever could. He moved closer, drawn by an invisible pull, and cupped her face with both hands. "You're dangerous," he murmured. Her lips curved in a half-smile. "And you're not?" He kissed her then, not the tentative kiss of the first night they met, but something deeper, something that spoke of hunger and surrender in equal measure. His hand slid down her arms, feeling the warmth of her skin, the soft rise and fall of her breathing. She tilted her head, deepening the kiss, her fingers gripping his lapel as though she could anchor him to her. When they finally pulled apart, their foreheads stayed pressed together, breaths mingling. "You'll come back tonight?" she asked, her eyes holding his with a kind of unspoken plea. "I'll come back," he promised. "But Elena," he paused, as if weighing whether to speak the next words. "There are things about me you don't know. Things that could hurt you." She smiled faintly, tracing her thumb across his lower lip. "Then I guess I'm already hurt. Because I can't imagine letting you go." The air between them thickened, heavy with the truth neither wanted to voice. Outside, the city was waking, but here, in this quiet room, time seemed to hold its breath, caught between the heartbeat of what had just been and the whisper of what was still to come. The ballroom glowed with golden light, each crystal of the towering chandelier scattering tiny rainbows across the polished marble floor. Music swirled like a gentle tide, carrying with it the low hum of conversations and the delicate clink of champagne glasses. But Aaron barely noticed any of it. His eyes were fixed on her. Celine stood at the far end of the room, her back to him, the smooth curve of her neck revealed by the way her hair was swept up in an elegant twist. She wore a midnight blue gown that seemed to drink in the light and give it back in whispers. It hugged her figure just enough to make his pulse quicken, and when she turned, her eyes caught his like the flick of a flame on dry paper. He didn't remember crossing the room, but suddenly, he was standing in front of her. Neither of them spoke at first. The air between them was charged, like the moment just before a summer storm breaks. "You came," she finally said, her voice soft enough that only he could hear. "I told you I would," Aaron replied, his tone steady, though inside he was anything but calm. She tilted her head, a teasing glint in her gaze. "And here I thought you only made promises you couldn't keep." His lips curved into the faintest smile. "Not with you." The music shifted, slower now, deeper. Without asking, Aaron extended his hand. Celine hesitated for just a heartbeat before placing her palm against his. Her skin was warm, her fingers trembling slightly, though whether from nerves or anticipation, he couldn't tell. As they stepped into the center of the floor, the world seemed to narrow to just the two of them. His arm circled her waist, pulling her closer than the dance required. Her perfume, something delicate yet intoxicating, wrapped around him like an invisible thread. Their bodies moved in perfect rhythm, though they weren't thinking about the steps. It was the closeness, the shared warmth, the way every breath seemed to pull them deeper into each other's orbit. "People are watching," Celine whispered, her lips brushing the edge of his jaw. "Let them," Aaron murmured back, his voice low, his gaze locked on hers. "They'll only see what we let them see." She smiled, a slow, knowing curve of her lips, and leaned in just enough that he could feel the ghost of her breath against his cheek. "And what do you want them to see?" Aaron?" "That you're mine," he said, without hesitation. Her heartbeat faltered against his chest, but she didn't pull away. Instead, her fingers tightened on his shoulder, her eyes searching his face for something she wasn't sure she'd find. And in that suspended moment, as the chandelier's light rained down upon them, it didn't matter that the world outside the ballroom was tangled with secrets and shadows. Here, under the music and the gold light, there was only them, close enough to kiss, close enough to forget. The night sky above the city glowed with 1,000 lights, but inside the quiet rooftop cafe, the world felt smaller, more intimate. Aaron sat at the far end, fingers tracing the rim of his coffee cup, his mind heavy with the scene he had just witnessed. He had seen Celine kissing Cairo. It wasn't just a peck, it was the kind of kiss that lingered, the kind that told a story without words. And worse, she had closed her eyes, as if savoring every second. From across the rooftop, Celine noticed him. Her lips parted, as if she wanted to explain, but Cairo's arm still lingered around her waist. Aaron's chest ached. The sound of his heartbeat drowned out the city's hum. He turned away, but then, soft footsteps approached. It was Mira. Mira sat beside him, her smile warm and a little mischievous. "She's not worth your tears, Aaron," she said gently, brushing away the single tear that had escaped his eyes. Aaron chuckled weakly. "You think I'm crying for her?" Mira leaned closer, her voice low and teasing. "No. I think you're crying because you don't know what you're missing." Before he could respond, Mira leaned in and pressed her lips to his cheek, slow, deliberate, almost daring Celine to watch. Aaron froze, his breath caught between surprise and something he didn't want to admit. From across the rooftop, Celine's expression shifted from guilt to something else, something sharp and possessive. Cairo noticed her mood change and looked confused. The air between the four of them grew thick with unspoken emotions, each glance and gesture carrying more weight than any word could. In that silent moment, Aaron realized, this game of love had only just begun.